various social media platforms. We welcome you this afternoon to the sitting of the House. House Leader?
Madam Speaker, there's intended to be one statement today, uh, which will be given by the member from North Central St. Andrew and Minister of Labor and the Social Services. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Minister and long-standing member from Northwestern St. Andrew, let me invite you.
Okay. Before starting this brief contribution today, Madam Speaker, I want to pause for a moment to commend you for the professional and considerate and thoughtful way in which you have led the affairs of this honorable House. It is very comforting to know that we are in the hands of a true professional. Madam Speaker, I wish today to address the current controversy that has arisen as a result of the recent ruling of the Supreme Court on the employment status of security guards. Some of the comments appear to be calling into question the role and function of the Ministry of Labor and the minister with responsibility for the portfolio. Quite frankly, Madam Speaker, some of the comments are not complimentary, but they are thought-provoking. And they arise, I think, primarily from the fact that my natural style of involvement is not one of public pronouncements on every issue. And also the fact that sometimes in the heat of the moment, one may express themselves in a peculiar fashion that later you wish you had not. This is one such occasion. So, Madam Speaker, I ask that the blame not be placed on my heart, but on my head. I believe it is fair to say my heart is intact and in the right place. But from time to time, things do occur that cause one to divert somewhat, and you bear the consequences for that diversion. The fact is that the court has determined that all security guards are employees and not independent contractors. This is a fact that is now well known and well circulated. This, Madam Speaker, is a matter that has been debated for many years In fact, the issue has existed for over 30 years. I empathize rather with the concerns of the security guards. Many are understandably concerned about how the new arrangements will affect them, not only their job security, but how they will impact conditions for the years of service already given to the industry. For the years of service that they have devoted themselves to, Madam Speaker, it is a concern that involves all of us. And in the ministry, we will do everything in our power to explain to them as best we can so that they will have a thorough understanding and to work very closely with them in arriving at the way forward that will redound to the benefit of all concerned, both the workers and the companies. Bear in mind, Madam Speaker, that many have been working for periods of over 20 years in some cases. Madam Speaker, since late last year, the matter relating to the rights and benefits of security guards has come into sharp focus in this Parliament and in the general public. Let me explain the process, Madam Speaker. If a security guard believes that he or she has been denied any worker-related benefits, that guard can attend at one of the offices of the Ministry of Labor, and we have 13 island-wide, and seek their grievances, express themselves, and we will go in search of the solutions on their behalf. And in fact, at the moment, I can say that my information is that over 88 such cases have occurred across the island where guards have come in and they have held discussions and explanations have been given, and they have been able to at least understand the process more clearly. The reality is, Madam Speaker, following the Supreme Court ruling, several guards have already attended at the ministry's offices since March 2023 to seek guidance on whether or not they should sign the new employment contract. And that is at the heart of the issue, the new employment contract. The complaints relate to their previous years of service. They are concerned about the time they have spent in the industry, and they have felt that somewhere along the line that they could entertain the hope that they would be rewarded for that service in a concrete way. They are also concerned about vacation leave. But, Madam Speaker, the transition is what we are struggling with, from independently employed persons and employees of the respective companies. And it is that equation and that transition that has been somewhat challenging, as we have seen in the media and at the workplace. Madam Speaker, there are approximately 25,000 security guards employed in the country at this time. The fact is that in spite of the concerns, 85% have already signed their new contracts. I must inform this House that all complaints lodged by security guards are being processed for amicable solutions and resolutions, as is done for all workers. That is an ongoing process in the Ministry of Labor. In relation to the new employment contracts, all security guards are workers and are therefore to be guaranteed vacation leave, sick leave, overtime, maternity leave, where applicable, and all minimum standards for decent work in Jamaica. I emphatically state that any agreement that is in breach of these labor standards should be brought before the ministry for immediate intervention, and there will be absolutely no compromise on that. What is happening currently is that there is talk broadly being disseminated about the rights of security guards being violated. However, there are no concrete, Madam Speaker, and this is an important consideration. To date, there are no concrete reports presented to the minister or the ministry outlining the rights that have been violated. What are the violations? What are the rights that have been violated? There is none in the ministry on record at this time. So it revolves around a proper explanation and how to engage the transition, because things have changed dramatically since September 2023. As minister, I have seen a few of the contracts and recognize that the real issue is related to the lack of specific translation and the transition in the arrangements. I would like to inform this Parliament that all entities that provide security services must ensure that the guards have employment contracts. This was outlined in a communication from the Ministry of Finance with respect to those companies for which the government has responsibility, those entities. And every such entity, every guard working in those entities must be in possession of a contract. The consequences of not having that will be quite grave, but that will be executed not by me, but I expect through the office of the Minister of Finance. The political parties that have formed government in Jamaica since independence are inextricably linked to the labor unions of this country. In the case of the governing party, the connection goes beyond just an association. It is umbilically tied to the labor movement. And through the efforts of that government that has so far shepherded the legislation that is so impactful on the work and life of security guards and other workers, legislation has been passed, which is a manifestation of our commitment and involvement in working specifically with the security guards and workers generally. We have seen the Minimum Wage Act. We have seen the Maternity Leave Act, the Employment Equal Pay for Men and Women Act.
The minister's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move that the member's time be extended sufficiently for him to complete this very short statement that he has. May it please the Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the minister be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? Minister, you may complete.
I want to commend the minister for his sense of anticipation, because he says my very short presentation, and indeed it will be a short presentation. The Employment Equal Pay for Men and Women, as I said, Act, and the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act. These are all pieces of legislation that go to the heart of the development of the working class of this country. All promulgated by the government that I have the honor to be a part of. I wish to point out the groundbreaking initiative which was introduced by the administration of the Jamaica Labour Party in 1964 that took workers' rights and protection to the next level, moving from employment security to social security. This was done through the introduction of a compulsory national insurance scheme, arguably one of the most significant systems to protect the working people of this country. The invalids and retirement people who will retire. I will also remind this Honorable House, Madam Speaker, that it was our first Minister of Labour, the late Honorable Lyndon Newland, one of the founders of the Jamaica Labour Party, who I had the pleasure and honor of knowing and working with, who was responsible for the introduction of the NIS, the National Insurance Scheme, under the National Insurance Act. How can I forget? I've lived long enough to vividly recall the criticism when it was introduced. And when it was referred to as sin by the then opposition. Madam Speaker, we have nonetheless come a far way, and we have learned to collaborate and to cooperate together in the interest of the entire country. That is the spirit in which I make this statement, knowing fully well that in the area of labor, there can be no difference, there can be no division. And indeed, I'm trying my very best to strengthen that relationship. This brief history would not be complete if recognition was not given to the employers and unions that work closely with several administrations to achieve a relatively stable industrial climate, while at the same time improving and adding value to the lives of our workers. Successive administrations. The question is whether we are sympathetic to the plight of workers. That is the question that they're asking. Are we sympathetic to the plight of the workers? I will say definitively and emphatically, yes, we are, because we are springing from that in this movement that we call the Jamaica Labour Party, that forms the government of the day. It was Sir Alexander Bustamante who was the founder of the first trade union in the country. So no one has to try to lecture anybody on this side of the house about the importance of labor and our connection with labor in this country. You know, on a personal note, I've taken my licks over the years. This is 43 years of it. So 43 years I get, like if you get one a year, it's significant. I've taken my licks, but I don't roll over and die, and I don't allow it to detain me. Because on a personal note, Madam Speaker, I know what it is like to be on the line in a factory. I've spent 7 years working in factories, in transportation, in construction, in order to earn enough money to put myself through university. Most people believe that I was born with a gold spoon and somebody paid my university. I paid my own way in university by working on the line. So nobody has to tell me about what it is like to be a worker, the conditions under which you have to work. I have known what it is like, Madam Speaker, as a matter of interest, because people see me all the while. They don't know my background. They think they do. And they judge me on the basis of how I look. But let me tell you, as an 18-year-old at the Tri-Service Hospital in Ottawa, you go to Ellen Vlaker, you'll see it, a 10-story building. I was part of cleaning the walls, the external walls of that structure, with a swing scaffolding that we had to wind up one on either side. And if you want to talk about anxiety, as politicians like to, if you want to talk about what anxiety is, when you are winding up on either side, and one of you get a little ahead of the other, and the rope winds up on top of one another, and then it slips 6 inches, you think that it is 6,000 feet, not 6 inches, because that is such a frightening experience, which I have had. So nobody has to tell me about how difficult and challenging life is as a worker. Madam Speaker, I have pointed out the foregoing to demonstrate that as regards workers' rights and protection, this administration, our government, of which I am very proud, has a long history of which we can all justly be proud and appreciative. Madam Speaker, I will be personally meeting with security guards over the next few weeks and months and the companies to discuss their concerns and assist the parties to resolve the matters affecting them. Madam Speaker, I have gone one step further to ensure better regulations of the industrial security sector by appointing a committee led by Mrs. Helene Davis-White to establish a joint industrial council for the regulation of the industry and the protection of the security guards. Everyone has been talking, and my opposite number has mentioned it, because it's a good thing to do. And we have looked at it previously, and the Minister of Finance is seized of that as well. And we are at one in that, and we work together. I am sure the advisors to you, my opponent, but we are not really opponents, we are just on the different point of view, different sides of a single point of view, will agree with this move, and I enjoin everybody involved to let us get together. We will be holding town hall meetings, and I'm going to invite you to attend with us, and we discuss it with the workers, because we will all have one thing in common, and that is the well-being of the Jamaican worker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The first thing I want to say is to place on record my congratulations to the minister for getting to this point. The truth is that I wish he would have gotten there sooner. in terms of the Joint Industrial Council. It is something that I have been calling for, the security guards themselves have been calling for, other unions have been calling for, and it is long overdue. But late as it is something that is needed, and it is true that town hall discussions around it is going to be important, and we welcome that as we look towards the protection of the rights of the workers and a space for workers, owners, and their reps to have a conversation that can lead to ensuring that the decisions that are made as we have created the kind of labor and industrial relations climate that Jamaica is known for. So I want to say that. Madam Speaker, having said that, I really also want to address some of the comments that the minister has made. The first thing is that I'm not here to convince anyone of the position of the opposition as it relates to protecting the rights of the workers. Everyone knows that we were born out of the struggle for the rights of the workers. The workers are aware, Jamaicans are aware, everybody. So that's not the point I'm making. What I really want to address is 2022, 2023, and the issues that face us. And the major one, yes, that we're talking about today is that of the security guards. Minister, talk is cheap. Your empathy is good, but empathy is not enough. It's not enough. I accept that the governing party and the opposition party has two different philosophies about the role of the state. And I believe that that is at the heart of the difference that we share. What do I mean by that? We believe that the state has a responsibility to do those things that are needed to protect the rights of the worker. We don't believe that the approach is one that should allow the market to exploit the workers. We don't. And that's where we come from. And I'm going to say this as well, Minister. It is true that we have about 27,000 workers, 85% of whom are employed by ministries, departments, and agencies. You have noted that a number of them have already lodged complaints, a few. I believe in this conversation, we should not pretend not to recognize some of the issues that are different and make this situation unique. It is unique because we're talking about an industry that has never been unionized. We're talking about an industry that has proven is known for exploitation of workers. Yes? In terms of the denial of the rights that workers and employees should have been benefiting from. So it is not enough to simply say you want to make sure that every security guard has an employment contract. Because as we all know, the devil is in the details. If you have received complaints from these workers, then I would imagine, like I do, like other lawyers do, like other unions do, that you also have copies of the contracts themselves. I cannot fathom for the life of me how you could have in your possession contracts that basically deny workers of their rights, rights that you have agreed are in law. And that becomes just a case-by-case basis. It can't. It's because the one contract for the worker is not unique and specific. It is the template for the workers of this company or that company or the other. So once you come and you see that Johnny has brought in front of you a contract that denies them inalienable rights to which they are entitled, you then have a responsibility to go beyond talking about individual negotiations. You do. One of the things that it is clear, I have not yet seen a contract that protects any of the rights coming from the previous period of service. Yes? We are all clear as to what Justice Batt's ruling was. That certainly as of September 2022, they are due these rights. Every contract I have seen has a clause that says, don't talk to me about nothing to do with anything outside of this contract. Which means that the 20 years, 15 years, all of that, don't talk to, forget it. That's what it means. They go so far as to say that this, therefore, with the signing of this contract, you have relinquished any right to any disputes and anything owed before. I don't see how a government could sit down and be comfortable with that. So pardon me, if we on this side have thought that the issue was sufficiently grave that we should stand up and talk about it. Yes, we did, and we will. And the JIC is a good place to start, but we will continue to talk about it and take other steps until we see the situation rectified. Madam Speaker, everybody knows after 40 hours you go to overtime. When a company has a contract where only 40 hours is with company A, the additional 20 hours are contracted to company B to avoid paying overtime. That cannot be good. It cannot be useful. It cannot be allowed to continue. And it should not be allowed to continue because we know that that young mother, that young husband, who have been working with these companies for years, cannot afford to have their roster reduced, cannot afford not to be rostered enough to carry home food for the family, to pay for rent and all of that. Many of them are living hand to mouth and cannot take the risk of saying kefe. In fact, most of the contracts are for 1 year periods with a 90-day probationary period, and some with an additional 90 days probationary period. Basically, what you're doing, what they have done, is to put a worker who has been with you for 15, 20 years on a 6-month watch list to say, if you're bad, open your mouth and say anything. As you slip, you slide. Because for the next 6 months, we are going to see where you do. That's basically what they have said. It is not appropriate and we cannot allow that to stand. And I believe that a more active stance needs to be taken by the ministry. Quite frankly, Minister, I was very disappointed that there was a circular that came out earlier that spoke in very strong terms about those workers' rights, and that circular actually was withdrawn. It was withdrawn. And I'm going to say this, that the workers, 27,000 of them and their families, yeah, I want you to do the math, because I know that these numbers mean something, especially where we are in the cycle of life. Yes, the workers and their families are watching to see what is going to be done, because it's not about talking, it's about making sure that they are protected. And right now, they have been left to the mercy of some very rapacious business persons. Now, let me be very clear. I am not saying that every single company is doing this.
Member, your time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, the member's time has been expired. and she has indicated she needs 2 minutes. I beg to move that it be extended to allow her to complete her comments.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, colleagues. Madam Speaker.
What they say, my left ear is
Yes.
deaf. Both ears are working very well.
So I see. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. I really have not much more to say because I am in fact ending. It is untenable where we are, and a hands-off approach is not appropriate. In fact, I am going to invite the minister as he signed the contracts, well, the government, as they are signing contracts with these companies that offer these services to ministries, departments, and agencies, to look at the details. Because what I am told by individuals in the industry is that the rates for which they are signing should be an indicator that all is not well, and that these security guards will not be paid what we are talking about, and that in fact something chickeny is going on. It is so bad that many fear that smaller companies will be forced out of the industry by the arrangement being currently made between the government and these other companies that have no intention to follow the law. Over to you, Minister.
Let me comment. I haven't heard that word chickeny for a long, long time. We are truly a Jamaican parliament because that belongs to us and our grandparents before us.
Madam Speaker, just given the nature of the conversation, I just want to make an input. So I'm asking for your permission. No, he didn't.
You have an objection? House Leader?
Yes, he said yes. Yes, okay. So just to add some.
Joining us in this is very appropriate and very deserving.
So just rising to support and put the minister in his comments, and to, if I may, join in to congratulating on the move to form the Joint Industrial Council, which I think is a step in the positive direction. It's important that, to bring perspective to the conversation and recognize that ascending to the mountaintop requires many steps, and we may be at a particular point in that journey, but let us not forget where we are coming from. I just want to remind that this issue has arisen consequent upon a decision by the court in a matter brought by the National Housing Trust. The National Housing Trust is a public body in the office of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister exercises the policy discretion over the National Housing Trust. It would not be possible for the National Housing Trust to bring a case forward to the court seeking a declaration and establishing the contractual right of security guards to be treated as employees without the explicit support of this administration, the explicit support of the Prime Minister and all members who serve on this side. The fact that we are having quite noticeably some hiccups in the implementation as far as the contractual arrangements between security guards and the companies are concerned, and there are differences as to how that particular problem should have been approached or dealt with, let us not at all lose sight of the fact that we are here now because of decisions that this administration has made. The position that security guards have had in Jamaica has arisen, it has been this way for a couple of decades across several administrations. And in fact, the encouragement to continue in, or the encouragement for the prior arrangement to hold was given by various people acting in various administrations in the past. Where we are now is that this administration took the bold step to support the officers of the NHT to not interfere, even though there would have been lots of overtures and lots of lobbying for that to happen. This administration, the Prime Minister, members of the cabinet, took a decision to support the NHT in its quest to regularize what for decades has been an irregular situation. So let it be clear where this government stands in this issue. I can't talk about the past, but I can talk about when the problem came before me. What did I do? I was chairman of the NHT. When the problem came before me, what did I do? When the problem came before the Prime Minister, what did he do? We can all stand and talk about our record as members of government. Other people can talk about their record as well. Now, that is not to take anything away from the fact that there is, when changes of this nature are happening in a society, the implementation is challenging, is absolutely challenging, and nothing, we cannot take away from the challenges. An opposition member has spoken about some of the challenges that have occurred, where individuals have been believe that their voices haven't been heard, and that is something I know the minister seized upon and the gravamen of his statement. But even as we address that matter, which is a matter that requires addressing, my sort of contribution, Speaker, is to say, let us not forget how comes we got here. All right? Let us not forget how comes we got here. And the fact that this administration boldly supported, knowing that it would lead to some kind of dislocation, knowing full well that the designation as employees, if the NHT, if the government were successful, because remember, the government took, it is the government that took the security company to court, okay? And understanding that in doing so, there were risks. But the bigger picture was the equitable treatment of Jamaican citizens who work in that industry. And it's important that as we resolve the implementation issues, we don't lose sight of that. Okay, and I think we are at one that we want to resolve the implementation issues, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this government called this issue that has been around for a couple decades, we brought it to a head.
Madam Speaker, I know that you exercise your own discretion permitted to you under Section 11A of the Standing Order, and I hope that you will afford me similar, not large enough as you extended to the Minister of Finance, so a little latitude to not only ask questions.
I am going to extend the latitude, and I do so, and ask every member of this House to recognize that when I extend latitude, it sometimes goes in favor of one side, sometimes in the other, and that is something that we must recognize, because in a democracy, there's always room for that. But you have to recognize that sometimes if you don't get it, it's not prejudicial in any way at all. So I'm going to exercise the latitude and allow.
I will say, Madam Speaker, not for a moment I would have thought that would be, your exercise of discretion would be prejudicial, not for a passing moment.
I'm delighted to hear that.
But I seek your protection from the member from West Kingston. It's very disruptive. Madam Speaker, I stand in full support of my colleague from Southwest St. Andrew in her comments a moment ago. The truth of the matter, Madam Speaker, the issue is a very egregious one. My own personal experience, everywhere I go, as recently as 2 days ago, a security guard approached me about what we are doing to assist them. And that has been the challenge for a number of years. It is thousands of Jamaicans who are affected by this matter. And it precedes the court ruling last year, September. The matter has been long outstanding, so much so that the People's National Party in its manifesto in 2020 indicated that upon forming government, it will remove that relationship between and make security guard no longer contract workers, because the problem has been outstanding for some time. Madam Speaker, I seek your protection, because there are some people who feel like nobody must talk in this house except them. You all know yourselves. Madam Speaker, the matter that we're talking about, as I indicated, is affecting thousands of security guards and multiples of persons in many households throughout the country. And therefore, there's some urgency to dealing with the matter. I mentioned about the undertaking that we gave as a party, because the matter has been outstanding for so long. The Minister of Finance made a comment about the Ministry of Finance support to the housing trust that caused the court action. Fine. No, but that is not a contentious issue. No one is challenging that. While that is commendable, but we are simply saying, Madam Speaker, that is not sufficient. It is good and welcome what is done, which is in the interest of the workers, the security guards, but we can't sit on our laurels and say, because we have done this marvelous thing, job is over, continue as this business as usual. All we are saying, Madam Speaker, because the matter does not affect an individual worker here or there, is a whole group and class of workers that are being affected. And that is what gives urgency for the government to act in a holistic way to deal with this problem affecting our workers. That's what we are saying. And Madam Speaker, I am like many other Jamaicans, were and is dismayed when the guards are being told, go to court. You know, Madam Speaker, one of the reasons why many ordinary people out there elect us, is to use the power of the parliament to protect them. That's the relevance of politics. That's the relevance of democracy for the state. For the state to use its power to protect the powerless. This is an instance where the powerless, and no one can say that the security guards are not in a powerless situation. And it's for that reason we call on the government to act with some alacrity in bringing some order, given the urgency of it, so that not only the security guards employed to companies that is contracted to the government, but all security guard companies who employ personal security guard abide by that. That's all we are saying. We're not saying here to prescribe specifically what must be done, but give that umbrella protection to all security guards. And it would be useful, Madam Speaker, if the Minister of Finance had gone a little further and to say, not only must the security guard, if you have not said it, because I don't see the detail of the provision, Minister, so I won't say it doesn't, but if it doesn't, those companies that are employed by the government and are required to adhere to the conditions you set out, that if they do so elsewhere outside of government, they are disqualified from having contract with the government. So in other words, if a company A is employed to the Ministry of Finance, look, I can, when I'm through, if they are employed to the Ministry of Finance for argument's sake, but there's evidence that they are behaving in another way, untoward, elsewhere, outside the government service, that they are forbidden from being employed to you. Because you know the thing, if they can get away with it over here, they do it because they have protection over here. So, Minister, I just made that suggestion. But that is not to be the only suggestion. We are seeking a more holistic intervention to deal with the security guard. And in taking my seat, Madam Speaker, I want to say, let us not wait too long. These set of workers have suffered far too long. Let us treat it with some urgency, set some timeline, preferably by the end of next month, to have it resolved once and for all. Even if we do so on an interim basis. Even if we do it on an interim basis, but don't cause them to be waiting indefinitely for a complete solution. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I hope I did not exhaust the privilege which you so graciously extended to me.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, yes. I too want to join the minister in congratulating you in regards to the composition of a joint select committee to the industrial council, right, to deal with this matter. Minister, I know you are a wise man, and by virtue of the fact that you saw where you have almost 27,000 workers and only 88 complaints, I believe with your wisdom, you would know that there should be something preventing others from coming forward. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I just want to place on record that there are a number of security guards that are out there, Minister, who are afraid. They want to make complaints. They are working in some conditions out there. And we have to take in consideration when having these contracts being looked at in a serious way, that we look at the conditions under which some of these security guards are being working. And I am saying to the minister, you have eloquently heard you speaking about that you have been doing something now, but I don't want you to leave them on the road. I want you to carry them to the end. And I also, Madam Speaker, want to say that it's an extraordinary provision and process that is going to carry us through because we have never done it before. So it is a trial and error, and we are trying to find the best practices in order that we can be able to have these security guards find a home because they have no place. They are all over the place to find a home. Monitoring and supervision, a mechanism must put in place that instead of they coming forward all the time to be complaining and probably at fear of losing their jobs, that there will be some mechanism put in place that they can feel free to make sure that they are protected in doing their jobs.
To the minister to respond before you wrap up, Minister Samuda.
So thank you for that, Speaker, for your exercise of discretion. And it's good to see us, have this discussion and converge on points of importance. And I'm happy to see the response from the two members who last spoke about just a recognition of the decisive action that we have taken as a government to get here, while conceding that this is not the destination, there's further to go. Okay? Because, Madam Speaker, sometimes when we as a society, proverbially, let's say we are in Kingston and we want to travel to Montego Bay, and it takes courage to do that. It takes courage to start the car and say you're going to take that journey, and you go over the gorge when you used to have it, and you dodge one or two things, and you know on the flat, and you reach Trelawney, you're almost at the destination, and you end up with a problem, right? Yeah, you want to say flat tire, you end up with a flat tire, a little problem. That can be addressed. It should not be, the narrative should not be that, oh, you have the flat tire, Lord, you're not. No, the narrative should be, look, you've exercised the courage to get here. Now, it's important that we get to the end, okay? Now, just responding to the point made or the suggestion, happy that you made that point, because that's indeed what we have done. In the speech I made earlier this year, we have used the fact that the government is the single largest procurer of these services, and in fact accounts for a significant portion of the industry. And we're using procurement, in my case, in my ministry, Ministry of Labor has other powers. We're using the power that in my ministry to influence the direction of the industry. And indeed, the contracts of security firms with the government are being amended, and some of them have already been amended, to make it abundantly clear that if a security guard company does not treat workers as employees, that security guard company cannot offer services to the government. In other words, it's a ground for termination, whether or not that mistreatment is on the premises of the government or in providing services to some other actor. All it requires is for a credible source to make that complaint, and once it can be verified, it is grounds for termination. The government is absolutely serious about ensuring that after this ruling that it brought to court, that all persons who offer themselves in this industry are treated as employees, and we're using the full power of the procurement law to achieve that. And it's good that we can be at one with that, even as we support the member from Northern St. Andrew, North Central St. Andrew, in his Herculean efforts. And sometimes the journey is lonely. I know that from experience as well. And we just want to offer you support, member, in making right what has been wrong in Jamaica for such a long time. He deserves the support of all of us in the House.
Madam Speaker, a quick question. Yeah,
Yes, to be clear, if the infringement on the right of the worker is in a private setting, right, and it is brought to the attention of the government, and the government has a contract with that company, and that mistreatment can be proven, it is grounds for termination. That is the directive, okay? To the extent that you find out contract, one of the 500 that don't have it, let me know. But the directive, the policy directive, is that all contracts with security guard firms must have that provision in them.
Madam Speaker, one quick question.
Okay, we are at one.
One quick question. Minister, it has been, I've heard a complaint by contractors, contractors with the ministries, that this would be an additional cost, and that to them, and that in many instances they have that additional, the contract they've already contracted, and that requires that the government pays, do two things: pays over funds that are outstanding, and B, that the contracts, these new contracts, take on board fully those additional costs. Is this the situation? Is that what is to be expected by those contractors who've been complaining? Huh?
No, Madam Speaker. Yeah, Madam Speaker, because the Minister of Finance did raise some other issues, not questions, but statements, I think they could be treated as an extension of a statement, and I'd just like clarity on something that was said. So if you permit me, just very quickly, one, to say that part of why the issue is as difficult as it is and people feel so aggrieved is because, from the minister's own words, he has almost studiously ignored the voice of the security guards to date. So I think it is important where we are now. The second one, Madam Speaker, if you are offering anyone a ride to the country and you go over the gorge and you are not careful enough and you end up in the water and the person dies, I am going to tell you that nobody is going to say thanks for that ride. Yes? And that is the case we have. So, yes, the offer of the ride was good intention. Having started the journey, you can't leave them on the roadside to suffer. You have to take care of them. And therefore, for those who speak about it, you need to see it in that light and not to frame it as I often hear it being framed. Thank you.
I am going to allow the minister to wrap up now, and I have given a lot of latitude, and I've done so because I think it has to be established that every member of this House is agreed, both the government and the opposition. There's no division here. Every member of this House is agreed that the interest of our workers are paramount. And it is for that reason that I have allowed as much latitude. I'm going to ask the minister to wrap up for me now. The minister in charge of labor.
I am particularly pleased this evening the way these proceedings have gone, because it should be clear to all, both sides, of the importance when people work together. And in the case of the government, what has been demonstrated here today is the concept of join-up government, where ministers can work together with a common objective and achieve the level of results that we have achieved so far. And as I extended to you, my invitation to you, not only to go to the town hall, but to come to my hall at the ministry as well, to have discussions, because it was always my practice anyway. Everybody who I've worked with, that's how it works, right? So it's a delicate period, Madam Speaker. When this court ruling came down, it threw the entire private security business into turmoil, because no one knew what the result, what it would end. And thanks to the Minister of Finance, took hold of it, steadied the ship in terms of deliberations and involvement, came to our ministry. We went there, constant discussion. A lot of things that we do in the ministry is not disclosed, because that's the nature of the ministry. We don't go talking about every negotiation, everybody who meets. But we are a tight group that work towards results. We are results oriented. And as long as we get the results and the collaboration and the cooperation, then we can move mountains. Just one thing I'd like to add here. I'm going to rely heavily on the council, led by the senior trade union leaders of this country, and the private sector, and the companies involved in the security business. It is an incredible vehicle that will be fully utilized, and we will bring to the House what the results of all that we do, so that we can move together in a spirit of cooperation. But I want just to pause for 1 minute and remind us all, the figure is flexible, 26 to 28,000 security guards. That is almost the size of the entire security force, official security force of the country, police and army. So you realize the role of the private security guards. Without them, the country literally could not function. So it is a crucial industry. And as I close, I just have one word of caution to my colleague next door. The comment you made it was a condemnatory comment about the operation of some security companies. I would avoid that level of castigation for fear that it might be misinterpreted. Right. It is safer to be particular and hold discussions with them or whatever. We can cooperate on that. But once you put a blanket on it, then it becomes challenging. So let us move forward in that spirit. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for your wonderful conduct of managing this meeting today, despite the fact that the House Leader wanted to interrupt us, but it's all right. We can understand. He has a job to do, and so do we. So with that, Madam Speaker, thank you.
Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: submission of reports of investigation into the failure of the following 44 employees of the Transport Authority to file statutory declarations with the Integrity Commission. Mrs. Travail Miller, Tanisha Frankson, Shanika Sutherland, Samantha Price, Nikita Walters, Latoya Lindsay, Lilith Barnes, Marvin Hetman, Maureen Wilson, Pauline Morris, Shelley-Ann Brown, Nordia Brown, Opal Daly, Dawn Lawrence, Artlyn Adams, Avery Somerville, Terry Ann Williams, Benita Swaby, Fallon Kelly, Haydeen Hall, Andrea Bryan, Catherine Sinclair, Janet Brown, Violet Catnott, Sharifa Gordon, Miss Madams Ingram Allen Davis and Totlin Wallace Palmer, Messrs. Vivian Young, Winston Edwards, Albert Taylor, Jason Davidson, Garnet Lester, Faithfulness Odie, Everton McKinley, Chevis Gilzine, Alborn Legg, Anthony Bloomfield, Audie Bartley, Wayne Emmanuel, Michael Williams, Noel Francis, Christopher Williams, Griff Morris, and Ishmael Francis. Ministry paper number 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44 respectively, under the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017 in respect of extension of period of operation number 2 order 2023 for the following zones: the August Town Zone extension, the August Town Zone, the Greenwich Town Zone, the Denham Town Community Zone, the Mount Salem Community and environs in the Parish of St. James Zone, the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Zone, extension of period operation. The Parade Gardens Zone and the Savalanamar Zone. Also laid on the table of the House today. And these orders and ministry, these orders are tabled with their resolutions. And also laid is a copy of Ministry Paper number 45, entitled Annual Reports and Audited Financial Statements of the Jamaica Agricultural Society for the year ended March 31, 2029. I'll recommit this at a later stage.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that the next meeting of the House, I will move the following under the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Augustown Zone, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Greenwich Town Zone, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution. 3, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Denham Town Community Zone, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Mount Salem Community and Environment in the Parish of St. James Zone, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Parade Garden Zone, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Savlamar Zones, Extension Period of Operation Number 2, Order 2023 Resolution, which were all laid on the table on April 19, 2023. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take these motions.
House Leader, do you have something? Oh, minute.
Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023.
Ready now? Miss Curtis. Ready? Madam Speaker, I beg to move now for the recommittal of the item announcements to allow the clerk to make appropriate announcement. Ms. Curtis.
The question before the House is that we have the recommittal of the item announcements on the agenda. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements.
Also laid on the table of the House is Ministry Paper number 45, entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Jamaica Agricultural Society for the year ended March 31, 2019. And the indication of ruling regarding submission of reports of investigations conducted pursuant to Section 33 of the Integrity Commission Act in the failure of the following 44 employees of the Transport Authority to file statutory deduction with the Integrity Commission. Mrs. Travail
Miller, Tashana Frankson, Shaniza Sutherland, Samantha Price, Nikita Walters, Latoya Lindsay, Lilith Barnes, Marvin Hepman, Maureen Wilson, Pauline Morris, Shellyan Brown, Nordia Brown, Opal Daly, Dawn Lawrence, Arlene Adams, Avery Somerville, Terry Ann Williams, Renita Swaby, Fallon Kelly, Haydeen Hall, Andrea Bryan, Catherine Sinclair, Janet Brown, Violet Catnott, Janet Sharifa Gordon, Mesdames Ingrid Allen Davis, Kathleen Wallace Palmer, and Messrs. Vivian Young, Winston Edwards, Albert Taylor, Jason Davidson, Garnet Lester, Faithfulness Odie, Everton McKinley, Chevis Gilzine, Alborn Neg, Anthony Bloomfield, Audie Bartley, Wayne Emmanuel, Michael Williams, Noel Francis, Christopher Williams, Griff Morris, and Ishmael Francis.
Questions and answers to questions? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House, first of day.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023.
Members, the question is for the standing orders to be suspended to enable the minister to introduce and have read for the first time a bill shortly entitled the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. No, the minister first, Ms. Curtis, and then you read.
For the first time, the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023, read the first time.
Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Child Care and Protection Act 2023.
The Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023, read the first time.
We are now at public.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
We're now at public business.
Madam Speaker, members, the bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Administration Amendment Act 2023 and Offenses Against the Persons Act Amendment Act 2023 and the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023 have been presented to this Honorable House. It is our desire that the bills be examined by a joint select committee. However, before this can take place, the bills must be read a second time. I now therefore move that the bills entitled an act to amend the Criminal Justice Administration Act, an act to amend the Offenses Against the Persons Act, and an act to amend the Child Care and Protection Act be now read a second time.
Members, the question before the House is that the bills mentioned by the minister be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam
Clerk,
Speaker.
no, I'm House Leader. The clerk will read the bill a second time.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Child Care and Protection Act, read a second time. And a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Offences Against the Person Amendment Act, read a second time. And an act to amend the Criminal Justice Administration Act, read a second time.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the item notices of motions given orally be recommitted.
Members, the question before the House is that the item on the agenda, notices of motions given orally, now be recommitted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move. Be it resolved that notwithstanding Standing Orders number 76-1, this Honorable House appoint a select committee comprising the following persons: Mr. Delroy Chuck, Mrs. Favour Williams, Ms. Corenzia Morrison, Mr. Donovan Williams, Mr. Mika Davis, Dr. Angela Brown Burke, and Ms. Denise Daly, to sit jointly with a similar committee to be appointed by the Honorable Senate to consider and report on the bills entitled A, the Criminal Justice Administration Amendment Act 2023, B, the Offences Against the Person Amendment Act 2023, and C, the Child Care and Protection Amendment Act 2023. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion.
Agenda public business.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
That the standing orders be suspended to enable the House Leader to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. Those in favor? Those against? House Leader, you may start.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the motion be approved.
Members, the question of the House is that the motion brought by the House Leader be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The motion is approved.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motion with respect to the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2022 resolution be approved.
Members, the question before the House is that the motion relating to the Trademarks Amendment Rules 2022 resolution brought by the Minister be now approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now rise to just say a few words on the resolution regarding the Civil Service Establishment Act, General Order of 2023. So, Madam Speaker, in accordance with the Civil Service Establishment Act of 1976, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023 has been prepared and is presented to indicate changes to the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2021. Madam Speaker, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023 outlines the reorganization of ministries and departments and consequently the creation of new posts, the abolition of posts, and the reclassification, upgrading, and retitling of existing posts. Now, this is at December of 2022, so it does not include the most recent information. But we nevertheless have to do it because if the posts haven't gone through this process, then the public service can't act on this too, right? So, Madam Speaker, so let me just say, we will bring, I'm expecting within a few months to bring another one of these that will have the updated salary information for all the established positions in the public service. So, Madam Speaker, the major changes to be effected in the Civil Service Establishment General Order of 2023 includes the establishment of 127 new posts spread across the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to enhance the human resource management function of the Division of School Services. This will increase the capacity to better articulate the policies and programs, which will allow for more work efficiency and overall improvement in human resource management services to teachers and non-academic staff. The Department of Correctional Services was also facing challenges, including inadequate staff, prevention of the entry of prohibited articles into correctional centers, and an increase in population across 11 correctional institutions, 7 of which are adult and 4 juvenile. With amendments made to sections of the Corrections Act, empower the department and the courts to deal with the problem of trafficking of prohibitive articles, as well as strengthening of the Rehabilitation Division to absorb the Correctional Services Production Holdings Limited functions. Approval was given for the creation of 117 new posts and upgrading and retitling of additional posts to strengthen and streamline the Rehabilitation Division's functions, to improve personnel security and auxiliary support in probation aftercare services, and to strengthen the rehabilitation and probation aftercare arrangements, which will improve rehabilitation programs and aftercare service delivery to the courts, communities, and correctional institutions. The staffing review of the Division of the Financial Investigations Division and the merge of the Revenue Protection Division and the Public Accountability Division to create the new Revenue Protection Division resulted in the creation of 214 new posts. This new division will work alongside the Ministry of Finance in the achievement and maintenance of debt and fiscal sustainability. The additional staffing is expected to improve the development and execution of policies associated with public fiscal management, improve the ability to address multiple issues at once, cause a greater alignment of competencies and skills, authorities, management process that will enable the business process to operate more effectively, and 4, provide autonomy and resources to these departments in effecting their mandate more efficiently. Other major changes made through the reassignment of portfolios and significant restructuring involve the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Ministry of National Security, Attorney General's Chambers, Ministry of Health and Wellness, Police Department. Madam Speaker, the Civil Service Establishment General Order 2023 reflects changes in 2 areas. Part 1, Madam Speaker, shows changes in the complement of posts in ministries and departments. These changes included retitling, reclassification, and upgrading of posts, as well as the creation of new posts and the effective dates for these changes. These changes can be broken down into the following: 1,147 new posts were created, 460 posts were upgraded, 175 posts were reclassified, 766 posts were retitled, 6 posts were regraded, and 2 posts were red circled. Madam Speaker, Part 3 shows the abolition of 413 posts from the establishment. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, just to note, as I've done when discussing previous orders, the Post Operations Committee of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, which comprises members from my ministry, from the offices of the Services Commission, from the Jamaica Civil Service Association, which is a union, continues to meet regularly to review the civil service establishment, including considering requests and comments from various ministries, departments, and agencies. Madam Speaker, I ask that this Honorable House approves the Civil Service Establishment General Amendment Order of 2023.
Members, the question before the House is for the approval of our members of the Civil Service Establishment General Order Resolution 2023 brought by the Minister of Finance. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Your motion is approved, Minister. Dr. Chan, Zozo.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the resolution notice of which I gave earlier.
Members, the question before the House is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the resolutions, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The zone of special operation are once again presented before us for consideration. It's non-contentious. We are all aware of it, including those, especially those who may have one of the zones operating in their area. As said, as defined as the government's strategic objective under the zones of special operation, focusing on behavioral, infrastructural, and capacity development at the residents within the designated zone. We have 7 of them active. And I want to underscore the significant and strategic investment that the government has been making with the zone that relates to case management and psychosocial support in the areas, which is moving into the whole zone where we are, the build zone and the sustainable aspect of the zones of special operation, where the case managers and the psychosocial support services now carry on to prevent the redevelopment and recruitment of new individuals in gangs that may have been associated in those areas. Progress has been made, of course, with these communities, and the government remains committed to further supporting long-term, sustainable, and meaningful development within these zones. Therefore, in accordance with the requirement under this zones of special law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measures, Act 2017, we are seeking to further extend the 7 areas currently declared as zone of special operation, which will all expire on the 24th of April, 2023 if we don't. And before identifying them, Madam Speaker, I point out that the amendment to the zones of special operation, the law reform, zones of special operation, special security and community development measure, Act 2017, were, as indicated in the Joint State Committee, are now at bill stage, and they are going back to the Parliamentary Council, I think, for the final round. Unfortunately, these activities do take a little time to go through the process, and as they meet several other activities with a limited staff. But at that time, you understand, the reports will come every 6 months instead of every 60 days, which makes, for this kind of activity, a more meaningful report, and in fact, and makes the discussion also more meaningful at this stage. But there is no contention, so I'll proceed to indicate that acting on the advice of the National Security Council, and in accordance with the law reform, zones of special operation of special security and community development measures, and in accordance with Section 5 of the Act, which guides that the Prime Minister and Council, after consultation with the Joint Command made by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the period referred to in Section 4.3, the Mount Salem, Denham Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Savannah zones of special operation, special security and community development measures to be extended for a further period of 60 days. Madam Speaker, the zones continue to transition along the clear, hold, and build spectrum, which flows from our national security strategy, with positive results in the respect to crime reduction. Mount Salem and Denham Town continue in the build phase. Greenwich Town is in hold and build. August Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Savannah will continue the whole phase for this period of extension as we look to begin the expenditure in the 2022-23 budget to extend the build into these areas and to examine further extension. I'd pause and say, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance indicates that while the compensation package absorbed his attention for this particular financial year, and the extension of the recurrent expenditure has been pretty steep and demanding on the budget, this particular program will get required funding at some stage this year to expand to the various challenge areas, because it has been demonstrated to work very effectively, not only in reducing crime, but in beginning that process of sustainable change within the communities in terms of increased safety, peace, and of course, significant social transformation. According to the statistical data provided by the JCF, as of the 13th of April 2023, for the period prior to and during the declaration of the respective zones, all areas under the zones continue to record reduction in all major crimes, including murder and shootings, which is the ultimate symbol of violence in our community, which record the following reductions: for interest, Mount Salem at 60% in murders and 63% in shootings over the period indicated. Then town is 13% and 40%, a bit lower than the other areas, but in fact, we have seen a significant reduction in the gang violence and the movement and apprehension of a significant number of the criminal actors who lead in that area. And I expect the next round and this will begin to look even better than we are now. Greenwich Town a 35% reduction in shooting, in murder, while a 70% reduction in shootings. August Town 64% and 78%. Norwood 56% and 100% reduction in shooting. There are a couple of murders based on other activities. Parade Gardens, violence, of course, which is still the propensity of a number of people. So stabbing and battering with stones, etc., seem to be appearing in a number of areas. But in those cases, largely interpersonal, which is an area that the Prime Minister is indicating his work of the Violence Prevention Commission will be examined and the programs emerge to be scaled up nationally to deal with this aspect of pathology of crime. Parade Gardens had a 93% reduction in murder and 91% in shootings. And Sablamar has a similar 93% in reduction in murder and 75% in shooting in shootings. Madam Speaker, I therefore wish to, as I indicated before, the law reform zones amendment is now at bill stage, and we have sent that bill for final review by the Chief Parliament Council, at which point we should be able to get a bill to the House, the amendment bill, which will allow us to assess report on a 6-monthly basis and have a more meaningful interrogation of the program, which I expect will continue for some time as we take on the challenges that face these just approximately 100 communities in Jamaica, and in fact the wider issue of the propensity of several young Jamaicans, many young Jamaicans, to adopt violence as a solution to any challenge they have. So the work will be ongoing, but the zones of special operation provide a good community-based operation that can be scaled up to involve the wider areas in Jamaica and provide a sustainable solution. Madam Speaker, the safety and well-being of all Jamaicans is a concern and priority of this government and all parliamentarians. The work being done in the zone of special operations will bring about long-term transformational change in these communities and across the island. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you and seek for the affirmation of the House of this resolution.
Members, the question before the House is that the resolutions brought by the
Madam
Minister.
Speaker. Not much to say because you know this is not a contentious matter. We are on record in terms of supporting the Zozos and certainly the extension in these areas. Our concerns remain the same that we have said, that there are so many other areas where our communities are really crying out. I say it not because the members are not here. They aren't, but I still want to make sure it's placed on record that an overall look at the other areas that are in need that are not currently under the Zozo. Also, based on the work that we have done on both sides of the House in terms of the amendments to the legislation, I would be remiss not to say that we were expecting and hoping that those amendments would have been in effect so that we would come into the new regime of just receiving the periodic reports on the Zozo. Thank you.
Minister, as usual, my comments are brief and to the point, supportive of the framework, but requiring and wondering, when we're going to move in a way that it's costly. We know it's a cost to it, but there are specific issues in constituency that I think we can be very targeted on. Just very targeted on. So I'm saying, I've been talking to you for a little while about it. And so I expect, Minister, that when that the amendments come on as quickly as we can, and two, that some of those very targeted and special measures that we know would make a difference, that those are attended to as quickly as possible under other frameworks in the meantime.
Members, the Question, therefore, before the House is that the resolutions brought by the minister be now approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, all your resolutions have been approved.
Thank
House
you, Madam
Leader.
Speaker. May I thank my colleagues on both sides of the House. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for your efficient conduct of the matter, and to my colleagues on both sides of the House who continue to support what is one of our excellent programs supported by all members of the House. And we do look forward to extending and scaling up into other areas along with the various programs we have. But bear in mind that that scaling up will come from the other arms of government. The Ministry of National Security is more focused on laying the foundation for the model and to expand it and develop it over time, which will short time. I want to assure my member, you'll hear from us this year. Thank you.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, this is the item of adjournment, but before the formal resolution, I crave your indulgence for a member to make a comment.
Certainly. Member.
Madam Speaker, I wish to rise on the motion or at the end of today's proceeding, just to bring to the attention of this House and to really mark for the record a significant event that took place here today, and for reasons that the Minister of Finance and I discussed. It wasn't really discussed before the motion, the resolution was passed. And that is on the Trademark Act. I just wish to make these observations, Madam Speaker. That it marks a very momentous occasion. It brings to an end a long effort and a long discussion across government to address the matter of the Madrid Protocol. And both sides have worked on it. My colleague, the Minister of Culture, is someone who she and I worked on it to make this eventuality. It has taken quite some time. Very involved process, requiring amendments on several pieces of legislation and to put in place some administrative arrangement so that what is called the Madrid Protocol could be implementable. The protocol, Madam Speaker, addresses the ability of copyright and trademark legislation to be trademarks to be registered in one place and to be protected globally, at least for those members joining the Madrid Protocol, of which today there are several. Jamaica would be one of the developing countries that would have successfully gone through all of the stages and is now able to implement the legislation. Today's resolution really addresses the fees or the fee structure to what was amended previously and passed in this House. But the single act of the approval of the resolution makes implementable that entire regime. Madam Speaker, for those in the cultural and creative industries, it marks a milestone, as well as those in the business entity, because it protects intellectual property. And the value of these intellectual property, Madam Speaker, is sometime in the millions. We are reminded that the simple tick for Nike is worth billions of dollars. Similarly, we have powerful brands here in Jamaica, trademarks that underpin those brands. And it will mean that their protection globally will be advanced through the implementation of this legislation. So it should not be underestimated. And of course, we are well aware of all the possibilities and the opportunities for our creative industries, our musicians, our artists. They are today being brought into a situation where their intellectual property can be protected globally. And so, Madam Speaker, I didn't wish for this very momentous occasion. We have worked across the aisle, the Minister of Culture, myself, and others have worked very hard and tirelessly. So too, the civil service, the people at JIPO and the ministries have worked tremendously hard to make this happen. Our lawyers who were previously trademark agents, they had reservation for a long time. But I believe we have come to a situation now where they understand that changes will happen, but that opportunities still remain for them to participate and to play a significant role in this process. So we have come to a very happy conclusion. And I just want, for the records and for those who have worked on it, to mark this very important and signal occasion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member. House Leader?
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for the day. I now invite you to adjourn this honorable House until Tuesday, April 25th at 2 p.m., when we'll continue the sectoral debate, and the speaker at the time will be the Minister of National Security, Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, and the opposition spokesman on energy, Mr. Philip Paulwell. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. The question before the House is that the House do adjourn until next week, Tuesday, the 25th of April, 2023, when we will continue hearing speakers in the sectoral debate. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.